This is the latest handout to the arms dealers. So this is from CNBC. It says the United States House passes $40 billion Ukraine package to provide military and humanitarian aid. So the House voted overwhelmingly after President Joe Biden urged quick congressional action. Okay, so you can see the vote there, the tally. It's 368 in favor, 57 against. And these 57 votes against this behemoth were all Republicans. That's an interesting aspect, which I'll get to in a second. So this piece of legislation gives Ukraine $40 billion in aid. If you want to break it down, it looks something like this. This is from the Washington Post. They show you that early March, the U.S. gave Ukraine $350 million in military aid, then $800 million, then another $800 million, and then another $800 million, and $3.8 billion in total. And then, here we go, $20 billion. $20 billion. So half of this new package is going towards the arms dealers. Wow. That's a nice check. And you guys remember a few months ago, we were looking at a transcript. It was a quarterly call, I think it was from Raytheon. And they were saying, yeah, the situation in Ukraine and the situation in Yemen is looking good for business. This is what they mean. Of course, they build weapons to kill people. So war is profitable for them. Here's what happened. You saw the House overwhelmingly voted in favor. This is the tally, right? So you can see 219 Democrats in favor, and the Republicans, you know, most of them as well, the majority in favor, 57 of them against, okay? Now, I want to focus a second on the Democratic portion of that vote, yes? The entire Democratic Party voted for this. What does that mean? Well, it means that the so-called anti-war portion of the Democratic establishment, which is, it sounds like a hell of an oxymoron, are frauds, right? So when we talk about the squad in the United States, it's these firebrand young congresswomen like AOC and Ayanna Pressley and Ilhan Omar and Cori Bush and so on. You know, they ran on so-called progressive values. I don't know what that means at this point, but, you know, things like, oh, we should stop giving all this money to the corporations and the weapons industry, and, you know, we need to have healthcare and free college and things that are fine. Like, you know, this is these are basic things in Western Europe and so-called industrialized countries, most of them U.S. allies. So nothing controversial there. But they've been saying that the military-industrial complex is a bad thing, right? So how does that square up with going and handing them $20 billion? A little bit odd, right? And you can see from the tally, there was no need to do that. You can see this passed overwhelmingly, 368 in favor, 57 against. So the question here is, why did people like, you know, AOC, you know, Ayanna Pressley not vote no? Why didn't they just vote no? Here's Ilhan Omar. She voted yes. Right? It's obvious because they all voted yes. Ocasio-Cortez voted yes. So my point is, why didn't they just do a symbolic no vote, right? So they could still keep up their whole shtick and turn around and go, you see, I'm totally anti-war. This is too much money, and I'm totally against this, and that's why I'm voting no, because it's against my principles. And they know it's going to pass anyway, so they don't have to vote yes for it anyway, right? But they wouldn't even do that. They wouldn't even bother to keep up appearances. They can't even bother. They can't even be bothered to do that. They just don't care. It's like, yes, let's go. Wow, very progressive, right? And of course, you'll have sycophants and all sorts of brainwashed fans of these politicians who, you know, again, that's not really a good starting point to be idolizing them. But, you know, you'll have all sorts of crazy worshippers of these politicians who will come up with all sorts of excuses, right? They'll say, well, maybe she was feeling sick, or, you know, maybe she didn't read the bill, or like all sorts of excuses. There's always something, right? There's always something to justify these so-called progressives screwing over the people that they got to vote for them, to not adhere to their principles. And another striking example of that is last year in July 2021, Ilhan Omar. Right? Ilhan Omar, who is part of this squad, she's a Muslim woman, Somali refugee. She's a congresswoman from Minnesota. And what does she do? after being attacked by the Israeli lobby, after being attacked as an anti-Semite, after being attacked quite unjustly, really unjustly and unfairly. What does she do last year? She votes to give Israel $3.8 billion. Now, when you know what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, and you know what occupation means, and you are supposedly, you are a self-professed supporter of Palestinians, why on earth would you go and give almost $4 billion in weapons to Israel? To uphold that occupation, which goes towards things like killing Shireen Abu Akleh or bombing Syria, which two things that happened in the last 24 hours, right? 48 hours. So either she's a complete idiot or she's a hypocrite. And I have no doubt in her cognitive abilities and her intelligence. So I'm going to go with the latter. I think she's a hypocrite, just like all of the people that are in this so-called squad and who pretend to be anti-war. They're complete hypocrites. There is no way on earth you would get me to give Raytheon $20 billion, okay? Like, you put a gun to my head, I'm not doing it. It's just not fucking happening, okay? So I don't buy these excuses that, oh, well, we had to because of this. They always have something, right? And they take turns actually doing this. So sometimes you'll have AOC voting against aid to Israel, but then Ilhan Omar will vote for it. And they will give the votes just enough so it passes by a simple majority, which makes it even worse because it's not only these people are hypocrites, they're giving Israel money. No, they are necessary. They are giving the required votes to make sure that the bill passes, which makes it twice as worse. And this has happened multiple times, not just with the one particular thing that I'm talking about, but again, this is important context. And so you can see bipartisanship, right? There's always agreement between Democrats and Republicans on all things war. And this is what happens when you have a government filled with employees of corporations, right? So these are not public servants. They're corporate servants. They work for Wall Street. They work for the weapons industry. So when you understand that, the votes make complete sense. They make complete sense. And obviously, you have other people who are looking out for their careers. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, their votes are the same, and so on, and so it goes. I want to read you also a very interesting thing. I think this was Glenn Greenwald who pointed this out to me. If you go to Cori Bush's website and you look at her statement on this vote, right? So she's, again, one of these self-professed progressives. She says here that of 40 billion, this is an extraordinary amount of military assistance, a large percentage of which will go directly to private defense contractors. In the last year alone, the United States will have provided Ukraine with more military aid than any country in the last 2 decades, and twice as much military assistance as the yearly cost of war in Afghanistan, even when American troops were on the ground. The sheer size of the package, given an already inflated Pentagon budget, should not go without critique. I remain concerned about the increased risks of direct war and the potential for direct military confrontation. Oh, really? So why the fuck did you just vote for the bill? This is something you write when you say, I'm not voting for it. Because there you go. Because I'm worried about the bloated Pentagon budget. I'm worried about this starting World War III. So I voted no. But here you see a prime example of how these so-called progressives talk the talk and then vote the other way because they think you're stupid.